Good morning. This is Ron. It is Monday, July the 16th. Welcome to Storytime. Thank you. And yes, this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I make the presumption for the status quo and speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. So, the benevolent and malevolent universe premise and why that's one of the reasons why it's important. Besides the fact that one is real and the other is a figment of the left's imagination. To go over it again, the benevolent universe premise basically says that this is a universe that is benevolent. It's knowable. We can know things, and success is to be expected. Malevolent universe says that it's a scary universe, that nothing can be known, and that failure is to be expected. So now the malevolent universe premise is not only wrong, it's a lie. And one of the reasons that we know that the people that are promoting this are lying is their simple attitudes. Because you can tell, a lot of times people will say, you don't know what I'm thinking. Sure I do. I can tell by the way you act what you're thinking. Okay, whether or not you respect reality. You can talk all this nonsense about, well, what's real? What do we really know about reality? How can we be so sure? And then you look at this person and watch him look both ways before he crosses the street. So don't sit here and tell me you're confused about reality. You're not. So the same thing applies to the malevolent and benevolent universe premise. In a malevolent universe premise, failure is to be expected. So how do you explain success? Success is explained by the people on the left as an aberration that occurs when somebody gets lucky, cheats, or a combination of the two. That's the reason that the left hates successful people, particularly the rich, because as far as they're concerned, the only reason they're rich is because they got lucky, cheated, or a combination of the two. That's also why they keep using the term give back. So-and-so should be giving back. And you'll hear particularly athletes, well, I want to give back. Well, you didn't steal anything. You didn't borrow anything. I don't agree with necessarily the fact that he gets his money from the middle class and the lower middle class, the fans. They have to pay ever increasing prices for their tickets so that he can make millions of dollars a year. But that doesn't mean that he came about his money in a surreptitious way, or by getting lucky, or by cheating. So, but the left says that that's the case. However, when they encounter a cheater, what is the left's attitude towards that cheater? They're as offended as everybody else, because in a benevolent universe, cheating is unnecessary. Success is to be expected. There's no reason to cheat. You don't need to. You're not always going to succeed, but eventually you will. Okay? And so that's why cheating is frowned upon. The left frowns on cheating as much as anyone else, the right and everyone else, in the center, whatever. So if they truly believe that this was a malevolent universe, they wouldn't frown on cheating or cheaters. They would cheer it. Okay, Lance Armstrong would be their hero. They'd say, way to go, Lance, for sticking it to the man, for sticking it to an uncertain, unkind, malevolent universe. Good for you. You got yours. That's what they'd be saying. But they don't. They're as ashamed of Lance Armstrong as everyone else who knows that this is a benevolent universe. So remember that. It's the malevolent universe theory is not only wrong, it is simply a lie. It's a perpetration, for lack of a better term. Anyways, when I come back, I'm going to be reading the two segments. One is going to be Tammy Bruce reading another part of her chapter in her book, The Death of Right and Wrong, and then another segment from the Philosophy According to House. Thank you very much. And yes, and reading another segment from Tammy Bruce's book, The Death of Right and Wrong. The last time that I read this last week, we were dealing with the death of, the death sentence of Abu 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 Jamal is the last name, so it's Mumia Abu Jamal. There we go. And he was accused of, convicted of murdering or killing a police officer, and he was sentenced to death. And that there's been an outcry by the left, particularly the celebrities on the left, against the death penalty of Abu Jamal. So, struggle for the soul is this next section. The death of right and wrong is finally serving its purpose for Mumia Abu Jamal. In December 2001, 3 years after the acquittal of Montoon Hart, Abu Jamal's death sentence was overturned by federal district court judge William H. Youn, Jr. This lone federal judge accepted an argument based on a technicality to the effect that the sentencing instructions to the jury were unclear, a claim that has been unanimously rejected by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Although Judge Youn upheld the first-degree murder conviction, the overturning of the sentence means more years of suffering for the Faulkner family. Upon hearing of the judge's decision, Maureen Faulkner asked, "When are we going to be able to live a normal life?" Unless the appellate court overturns Youn, what this could mean for Maureen and for Danny's brothers, Pat, Larry, Tommy, and Kenny, is yet another sentencing hearing where they will have to relive the brutal murder and face the orgy of support for the murderer. Just as Judge Youn was no doubt affected by the benefit concerts, by the campaigning of clueless bleeding heart celebrities, and by the decades of efforts in the press to transform murderer into hero, so the jury pool is far too likely to be drowning in the swamp of moral relativism. At one of the many rallies for Abu Jamal, Ed Asner made this pronouncement: "We must fight for the establishment," we must fight the establishment. This fight is for the nation's soul. Mumia must not die. Asner is right. This is a fight for the nation's soul. The left elite, those who dream that the nation's soul will one day look like Mumia Abu Jamal and Montoon Hart, are determined to win this fight. We must be as determined not to let them. Welcome to the Bacchanal. The left elite has worked for years to brainwash us into some sort of values lobotomy. We're not to judge those who kill. The guilty people are of color or women. We are to excuse those who destroy lives as victims of a racist, sexist, and homophobic world. Or now, on the global scale, the unfair and oppressive multinational corporate world, we are to blame the innocent and lionize the guilty. And quick comment is that the reason for that, in part, is because of, again, malevolent universe premise. The idea that in a malevolent universe, the heroes are the Abu Jamals. And not only in a malevolent universe, but from a deterministic standpoint. The left's point with Abu Jamal is that he was forced to do what he did by forces beyond his control, by the multinational corporations, racism, etc. And so therefore he should be held blameless. The other part of this is skepticism rears its ugly head here too, because skepticism, the contradiction that nothing can be known with certainty, is particularly a potent weapon in courts. If you're looking to undermine the justice system and do it by getting guilty people off, then the best way to do it is through skepticism. If you can convince jurors or potential jurors that nothing can be known with certainty, then none of them will take the evidence presented against a defendant seriously, and the defendant will end up going free, or in this case, getting the death penalty overturned. Ultimately, we have been encouraged to accept verdicts like Corey Arthur's and Montoon Hart's, and if you dare to say you don't believe in justice to be justice, let's see, if you say you don't believe, okay, then as I demonstrated in the New Thought Police, you will be dismissed as sexist, racist, or homophobic. We have been led behind the looking glass, where everything is the opposite of what it should be. And the opposite of what it should be is what they're doing is called subversion, subverting things. where smart is stupid, and intelligence is ignorance, beauty is ugly, all of that kind of thing. How does the left elite indoctrinate decent, thoughtful people into accepting, as an example, that some killers are victims and deserve to be set free? Keep in mind, I speak of the elite not necessarily as a cabal, but as a group of people who share certain basic assumptions, a certain worldview. One now accomplished goal is the brainwashing of society into believing that because of the color of their skin, or their gender, or their sexual preference, some in our multicultural society can never be understood by others, making judgment and punishment inappropriate. The corollaries are that traditional concepts of personal responsibility are outdated, and that expecting others to behave with dignity and expecting society to recognize the concepts of right and wrong is contrary to the ideal of liberty. Every idea, every act has the same value, none is more worthy than another. And judgment, that of all intellectual actions, is heresy in this bacchanalian new world. Of course, this effort has to start with convincing you that the standards by which you were raised were wrong. The ideas about religion, family, and sex are wrong, perhaps even harmful. In the world as defined by the leaders of the left elite, and again, I want to comment real quick, she's getting this right on the button. This is a lady that really knows what's going on. She's got insight. She's able to not just analyze things on the surface, as does so many pundits like Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. Let's see again. In the world as defined by the leaders of the left elite, murdering your children isn't murder if you're a woman. It's postpartum depression. Sex addiction, compulsion, and promiscuity aren't problems if you're gay. They're part of an alternative lifestyle. Vandalizing, degrading, or mocking the symbols of a religion is only a hate crime if the object is Islam or Judaism. If the target is Christianity, it's art. Murdering a police officer isn't murder if you're black. It's self-defense or a heroic act. Murdering 3,000 Americans isn't terrorism if the murderers are Muslims. It's the freedom fighters' heroic last act against an oppressor. Cheating on and lying to your wife isn't a sin, it's a sport. After all, it happened in the Oval Office. Taking vows, claiming to represent God, and then molesting adolescent boys is the fault of the church, not of the reprehensible gay men who betray their vows, their church, and their community. How best to change America's fundamental values? How best to indoctrinate you into a culture that grows sicker and more corrupt by the minute? As I will discuss in more detail in the chapters that follow, the left elite uses every medium at its disposal. And this is key. Television, film, music, and art, politics and the justice system, higher education and the news media. One of its most important tools is constant special interest group rhetoric. Keep in mind, the leftism I'm describing has nothing to do with the classical liberalism which our country was founded, the political philosophy based on individual freedom. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The left has had to restrict individual freedom of thought and deed in order to destroy the concept of judgment and undermine notions of right and wrong that have been held nearly universally for millennia. This is the result of the wrong people getting control of our culture at a time when we were vulnerable. It's that simple and that scary. It can also be reversed without having to diminish the benefits of liberty that flow naturally from our system and from our hearts. And she's absolutely right. It can be changed. This is the culture that is affecting our politics. Okay, and if we want to change our politics, if we want to look and see things getting better politically, we have to change our culture. And the way to do that is one-on-one. You and I have to be able to deal with the socialists in our lives, whether they are relatives or they are friends or coworkers or people you might meet in line at Vaughn's or on the soccer field. Learning how to deal with those people, learning how to basically frustrate them is the way that you're going to discourage those people from continuing to be socialists and promoting the socialist cause. So when I come back, House and the philosophy according to House. Thank you very much. And philosophy according to House. Love these. There's a lot of different ones. So philosophy according to philosophy in The Simpsons, philosophy in House, and et cetera, et cetera. And a way of explaining philosophical concepts and abstractions using pop culture as a tool. So it, right now we're into Aristotle, and basically we're getting into the meaning of life. Aristotle is trying to answer the question, what is the good life? For him, good is defined by things' proper function. For example, a good cane would be one that's easy to grip, helped you keep your balance, and kept you from further injury and pain while walking. A good doctor would be a doctor who was able to properly and efficiently diagnose and treat diseases, among other things. A good life, then, would be the kind of life that a good person would lead. So, what is a good person? What is humanity's proper function? We've already seen the answer. It comes from leading the life of reason. For Aristotle, this amounts to the rational part of us controlling the irrational part. The irrational part of us, common, contains our desires. It tells what we want and what we don't want. I like Thai food. I hate lima beans. This is how it works, but it doesn't tell us how much or how often we should want what we want. The irrational part, says Aristotle, contains no principle of measurement. Reason, however, can measure, can discern proper amounts. These proper amounts are the virtues. For example, consider courage. Someone who is easily angered and always ready to fight does not possess courage, but neither does the coward. Courage is, as Plato had already noted, knowing when to fight and when not to. Wilson, for example, often displays courage in his dealings with House, his friend. He knows when to stand up to him, but he also knows when to say nothing and avoid anger. Just using reason in any old way, of course, is not the same as leading a rational life. Solving Sudoku puzzles certainly requires logic and reasoning skills, but someone who did nothing else with his life would not thereby be living rationally. House's prodigious puzzle solving skills, on the other hand, are meaningful and important because of the results that they help to produce. Reason must be properly tied to action. House understands this. Again, from the one day, one room, when Eve, the rape victim, says, "Time changes everything," House replies, "It's what people say. It's not true. Doing things changes things. Not doing things leaves things exactly as they were." So, excellent stuff here with House and Aristotle. And Aristotle is the most lucid of the ancient philosophers. He's the one that got most of it right. If you read Aristotle, you'll realize that most of what he talks about is correct, whereas Plato, Socrates, and a lot of the others, they got some of it right, but they got a lot of it wrong. A lot of it ended up being not rational and using thought, but being guesswork instead. So when I come back, a joke or two from the New York City cab drivers joke book. Thank you very much. And the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book is written by Jim Peach, an actual New York City cab driver. So, question: what do a meteorologist in a snowstorm and a woman's sex life have in common? They're both concerned with how many inches and how long it will last. A woman places an ad in the personals column of the newspaper. It reads, "Looking for a man who won't beat me, who won't run around on me, and who is a fantastic lover." The woman waits a week but gets no reply. Then one day her doorbell rings. She goes to the door, opens it, and sees no one there. She closes the door and is about to walk away when the bell rings again. She opens the door and once again sees no one there. Then she looks down and sees a man with no arms and no legs sitting on her doorstep. "I'm here to answer the ad," he says. The woman doesn't know quite what to say to the man. Doesn't know quite what to say, so the man continues. "You see, I can't beat you and I can't run around on you." "Yes," said the woman, "but the ad also said that I wanted a fantastic lover." The man looks up at her and says, "I rang the doorbell, didn't I?" And on that note, we end another episode of Story Time Thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.